You know, when I say delete him emotionally, some people flinch. It sounds cold, right? Like you're supposed to suddenly erase every memory, pretend he never mattered, or act like you're made of stone. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not telling you to become heartless. I'm telling you to become powerful. Emotional detachment isn't about bitterness or pretending you never cared. It's about taking your power. It's about refusing to let someone else determine how you feel about yourself. Because the truth is, when you're constantly thinking about someone, when your emotions are tied up in their behavior, their words, their validation, you're handing over control of your peace, your mood, your entire day. Think about how much energy you spend checking your phone, rereading old messages, wondering what he meant when he said that thing, or replaying moments like scenes in a movie. You think that obsessing is love. You think that emotional entanglement is proof of your connection, but it's not. That's just addiction. That's a cycle. That's emotional chaos disguised as romance. When you delete him emotionally, you're not saying he wasn't important. You're just saying he's not the center anymore. You're not investing your emotional capital into someone who isn't depositing anything back. And that doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. It's the difference between someone living rent-free in your head and you finally changing the locks. And here's the part no one tells you. When you emotionally detach, you don't become less of a woman. You become more of yourself. You stop being someone who reacts and you start being someone who leads. You stop chasing breadcrumbs and you start demanding the full meal. People feel that shift. He'll feel it because emotional detachment is the loudest silence a person can experience. When you stop responding the way you used to, when your happiness no longer rises and falls with his attention, it shakes him, it disrupts the dynamic, and suddenly you're not the woman waiting around, you're the one he's trying to figure out. But don't do this to manipulate him. Don't emotionally detach just so he notices and comes running back. Do it because you deserve your peace. You deserve to sleep at night without your chest tight from anxiety. You deserve to walk into a room with your head high, not looking around hoping to be seen. Detaching is a gift you give to yourself. And the irony is, when you do that authentically, he does come back. Not because you play games, but because you stop playing his. And let me say this clearly. Detachment isn't apathy. You're still going to feel things. There will still be moments where your mind wanders back to him. But instead of letting that spiral control you, you'll start noticing it and choosing differently. You'll acknowledge the emotion, but you won't feed it. You'll say, there it is, that old urge to check his page, to text him, to figure out what he's thinking, but you won't act on it. And every time you resist the urge to chase comfort in him, you build strength in yourself. You begin to realize that the love you're craving isn't really about him. It's about you wanting to feel valued, seen, understood. And the moment you start giving that to yourself, he becomes smaller, not in a cruel way, but in a balanced way. He becomes someone you could have, not someone you need to have. That's when you become dangerous in the most beautiful way, because you're no longer driven by fear of losing him, fear of being alone, fear of missing your chance. You've stepped into your worth, and from that place, you make very different choices. You don't settle. You don't accept half effort. You don't waste your time deciphering mixed signals because you know someone who values you wouldn't send them in the first place. Now, people might look at you and think she's so calm, so unaffected, so unbothered. But deep down, it's not that you're unbothered. It's that you finally realized what's worth being bothered about. And it's not someone who made you feel like a maybe. This is what it means to delete him emotionally. You're not to deny your history, not to erase your heart, but to rise above the patterns that have kept you stuck, to stop responding from your wounds and start living from your wisdom. Because when you're no longer emotionally available to someone who couldn't show up for you, that's when they notice. That's when they feel the shift. That's when they start wondering what happened, what changed, and why they no longer have access to the part of you they took for granted. And in that moment, if he comes back, he'll be coming back to a very different woman. Let him feel your absence. Let him feel what it's like when your peace is no longer negotiable. Let me ask you something. How many times have you found yourself explaining, justifying, defending, or trying to get someone to see your side, to understand your pain, to just care a little more? You react. They pull back and you react again. They send a one-word reply and you send a paragraph. They ignore your message and you double text. They post something vague online and suddenly your whole mood changes. What I want you to see, what most people never even realize, is that every time you react like that, you hand over your power. You give them the keys to your peace. You think you're being emotionally open. You think you're fighting for love, but really you're abandoning yourself every single time you overextend to get a reaction. You start shrinking. You start questioning yourself. And that's when your identity becomes tied to their attention. That's not love. That's survival mode. And love should never require you to live in a state of emotion emergency. There's something incredibly powerful about not reacting, not because you don't care, but because you realize that not every action deserves a reaction, that not every message needs an immediate reply, that not every cold shoulder should shake you. The moment you stop reacting is the moment you stop feeding the emotional loop that's keeping you stuck. Because here's the truth. When you're constantly reacting, you're chasing reassurance, you're chasing connection, you're chasing answers. And all of that chasing makes the other person feel like they have something you don't. It creates an emotional imbalance and it puts them in the position of power, even if they're not doing anything impressive to earn it. But when you pull back, not in anger, not as a punishment, but as a conscious choice, you send a different message. You say, I don't need your validation to feel grounded. You stop being the person trying to get picked. You become the person who knows they're already enough. That shift is everything. It doesn't mean you shut down. It doesn't mean you go cold. It just means that instead of immediately reacting to every trigger, you pause, you breathe, you reflect, and you choose your response instead of letting your emotions choose it for you. Imagine this. He sends a message that feels passive-aggressive, distant, or maybe he just ghosts for a day or two. The old you would have panicked. You'd overthink, stalk his socials, maybe fire off a text trying to fix it. But the new you, the one who's emotionally grounded, leans back. You don't go into chase mode. You don't beg for scraps. You stay composed. You stay still. Because you know that anyone who's truly interested won't leave you in confusion. And it's in that stillness that something magical happens. They start to feel the difference. They notice the shift in energy. You're no longer reacting, so they lose control over how you feel. And that loss of control creates space for something else to happen. It creates curiosity. It creates reflection. It creates missing you. But again, don't do it for the reaction. Don't fall into the trap of strategic silence. Do it because you're choosing peace over performance. Do it because you're tired of auditioning for someone who can't even give you consistency. Because the moment you stop reacting to someone's bare minimum, they're forced to realize that it's not enough. You raise the bar by refusing to engage in patterns that drain you. And it's not always easy. In fact, It's incredibly hard to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. It's hard to resist the urge to fix things, especially when your heart is involved. But that pause, that resistance, that stillness is where your power grows. It's where you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you've been giving away so freely. You stop asking, why isn't he texting me back? And start asking, why am I making his response the measure of my worth? You start realizing that your value isn't up for debate, that your heart isn't a toy, that your emotions aren't there to be manipulated like strings on a puppet. And look, when you stop reacting, it doesn't mean you're playing hard to get. It means you're being hard to forget. Because suddenly, you're not the person he can provoke or control with inconsistency. You become the one he remembers, the one he wonders about, the one who doesn't flinch every time he pulls away. That's where the real attraction happens. That's when they come back, not because you chased, but because you didn't. You didn't beg, you didn't force it, you created space. And in that space, they either step up or they disappear. But either way, you win because you stopped letting someone else's behavior write the story of your self-worth. So the next time you feel that itch to react, to send the long message, to demand an answer, to try and make him see what he's missing, pause, breathe, step back. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't doing more, it's doing nothing. Let me tell you something that might sound simple, but is one of the hardest shifts to make after someone's pulled away. You have to bring the focus back to you. I know how tempting it is to keep your energy wrapped around him. You wake up and the first thought in your mind isn't about how you feel, it's about what he might be thinking. Is he missing me? Is he going to text today? Did he see my story? Is he moving on? Your entire emotional world starts orbiting around someone who right now isn't even showing up for you. And the more you make him the center of everything, the more lost you become in the process. But here's the truth. That energy you're spending analyzing him, worrying about him, chasing the idea of him, you could be using all of that to rebuild you. You've handed over your mental real estate, your emotional resources, your confidence, your joy. And for what? For the hope that if you care just a little harder, he might come back, that if you keep proving your worth, he'll finally see it. But what if instead you gave all that effort to yourself? What if instead of waking up thinking about him, you woke up asking, what can I do today that makes me feel alive again? What if your energy went toward rebuilding your routine, reconnecting with friends, getting back into your passions, taking care of your body, your mind, your heart, without trying to impress anyone but you? Because that's when something shifts. That's when the power dynamic changes, when you stop sitting around waiting for him to call and you stop building a life that's so full, so rich that you forget to check your phone. When you stop trying to be the version of yourself that he might find more attractive and instead become the version of you that feels undeniably real, undeniably powerful, undeniably you. That's when he feels it. That's when the silence gets loud. That's when he starts asking himself, where did she go? You see, the glow up people talk about after a breakup, it's not just about looking good. It's about reclaiming your energy. It's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the way you walk into a room with your shoulders back because you're no longer waiting for someone to notice you. You've already noticed yourself. You're no longer hoping someone else will pick you. You've already chosen you. And I'm not talking about pretending to be happy just to make him jealous. This isn't about playing games or posting curated moments for the sake of showing him what he's missing. That's still about him. I'm talking about real self-reconnection. Deep, genuine, intentional effort to fill your own cup. To rediscover who you are outside of this relationship, because somewhere along the line, you started measuring your days by his presence. His mood become your mood. His attention become your self-esteem. That's not love. That's emotional dependency. And that's what we're breaking away from. The beauty of bringing the focus back to you is that it doesn't just help you feel better, it also repositions you in his mind. People notice when you stop chasing. They notice when your energy isn't there anymore, when your texts go silent, when your vibe changes, when your life keeps moving forward and you don't slow it down for anyone. Suddenly the person who was unsure starts to wonder if they made the wrong call. They start to realize that your world doesn't revolve around them anymore. And that's exactly what makes them want to be part of it again. But here's the catch. When you do this right, when you really truly bring the focus back to yourself, you may get to a point where you don't even want them back. Because you start remembering what you deserve. You start seeing how small you had to make yourself to fit into their world. And when you taste peace, when you feel what it's like to not wake up with anxiety, to not second guess yourself every 5 minutes, you protect that peace like it's sacred, because it is. And let me say this clearly, you don't have to become this perfect version of yourself for someone to love you. This isn't about becoming flawless. This is about becoming whole. So stop asking what will make him come back and start asking what will make me come back to me. Because the moment you show up for yourself like that, consistently, patiently, powerfully, you become someone they can't forget. But more importantly, you become someone you're proud of. So if you're going to chase anything right now, don't chase him, chase your peace. Chase your growth, chase your light, because when you get that back, everything else takes care of itself and you won't even need to look over your shoulder. You know what most people underestimate? The power of absence. We're taught to believe that love means constantly showing up, constantly proving, constantly being available. Like if we're always there, they'll finally see how much we care and choose us for it. But sometimes it's not your presence that teaches someone your value, it's your absence. It's the space where your energy used to be. It's the silence that echoes louder than any conversation ever could when you've given and given, when you've been emotionally available, responsive, loyal, thoughtful, and it's been met with half effort, confusion, or inconsistency. There comes a point where continuing to show up doesn't create more connection, it just enables more distance. And the hardest thing in that moment is realizing that stepping back is the most powerful move you can make. Not to play games, not to punish, but because staying available to someone who isn't matching you only depletes you. At some point, they don't need another reminder of your value. They need to fill the void of it. Letting absence speak is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel the urge to reach out, to explain yourself, to reconnect, to fix, because you've trained yourself to believe that if you stop trying, it all falls apart. But what you'll learn is that if your connection with someone only survives when you're the one holding it together, it wasn't a real connection. It was you doing emotional labor for two. When you create space, when you step back, when you stop being the one to text first, to check in, to chase, something shifts. Suddenly the person on the other end is left with the silence of their own decisions. They don't get your energy for free anymore. They don't get the comfort of knowing you're always just a call or message away. And that absence, that stillness, it forces them to look at the gap, to actually feel what it means when your light isn't warming them anymore. Most people won't realize what they had while they have it, especially if you keep showing up no matter how they treat you. It's not because they're cruel, it's because you've made your presence feel guaranteed. And what's guaranteed becomes invisible. But when you step back, when you stop being the safety net, you become visible again, not through noise, but through the lack of it. And it's not just about getting them to miss you. This isn't about using absence to trigger a reaction. It's about using absence to rediscover yourself, because in the quiet, you'll hear things you've been too distracted to notice. You'll hear your own needs, your own boundaries, your own voice. You'll realize how much space someone took up in your heart without giving you anything to hold on to. And you'll start to see just how full your life can feel without the constant emotional roller coaster. You'll begin to understand that someone not texting you back isn't a crisis, it's information. It's a reflection of their priorities, not your worth. And once you stop filling the silence with your own effort, once you let things be quiet, you create the conditions for truth to rise. Because the right person notices when you're not there. The right person misses the energy you brought. And the wrong person just confirms what you needed to know all along. They only liked. You stop adjusting your tone just to avoid sounding too much. That quiet strength speaks louder than anything you could say. And it doesn't just make them rethink the way they treated you. It makes you remember what it feels like to honor yourself. You stop chasing validation and start claiming value. You stop needing someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. And that shift, that's magnetic. That's when people look at you differently. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you finally decided to stop being easy to take for granted. The funny thing is, when you raise your standard, two things happen. Some people will disappear, and that will hurt, but it will also reveal the truth. And others will step up, because when you show people what you will and won't tolerate, it forces them to decide if they're willing to meet you at the level you deserve. And if they can't or won't, then you just save yourself more time and more heartache. But here's the part that most people miss. You can't raise your standard and then go back to old habits when it gets uncomfortable. You have to hold the line. You have to resist the urge to make exceptions, to compromise your values for potential, or to slide back into patterns just because you're lonely. That's where the real work happens. In the moments where you want to reach out but don't. In the moments where you miss them but still walk away from the version of them that couldn't love you right. That's when you prove to yourself that you're not going to abandon your own heart just to keep someone else close. Because here's the truth, if someone really wants to be in your life, they'll rise, they'll show you. They'll bring clarity, not confusion, effort, not excuses, presence, not promises. But they can only do that if you create the space for it by letting go of anything that falls below the standard of love you know in your soul you're worthy of. So stop negotiating your values. Stop hoping someone will grow into the person you need them to be. Love isn't supposed to be about molding yourself to fit into someone else's emotional capacity. It's about being fully you and allowing someone to meet you there. And when you do that, when you truly stop settling, you'll notice something beautiful. You won't crave attention anymore. You won't feel addicted to their inconsistent affection. You'll be grounded, clear, and powerful in your decisions. And whether they come back or not becomes secondary, because you'll already know you didn't lose anything by walking away from what wasn't enough. You found yourself again. You want to know the most attractive energy you can possibly have? It's when you're not waiting for anyone. It's when you're not checking your phone every 5 minutes, not rehearsing what you'll say if they come back, not hanging your happiness on whether or not someone finally sees your worth. It's when you've detached, not because you don't care, but because you care more about your peace than someone else's confusion. That's the moment things start shifting, not just externally, but within you. Detachment doesn't mean becoming cold. It's not about pretending you don't have feelings or acting like you never cared. It means you're no longer letting your emotions be controlled by someone else's lack of clarity. It's stepping into your own emotional freedom. Because when you're attached to someone who can't love you the way you need. You lose sight of yourself. You tie your self-worth to their responses. You start reading into every little thing they do, wondering what it means, how to respond, how to be what they want. But real confidence, the kind that turns heads and draws people in, comes from knowing that your happiness is not on hold while someone else figures themselves out. You're not a placeholder. You're not someone they get to come back to once they've explored other options, played around, or decided they're ready. You're not waiting in emotional limbo. You're living. You've stopped making their indecision your prison. And when you detach from someone emotionally, it gives you your power back. All that energy you were pouring into them, you pour into yourself. You start showing up for your own life again. You go out, you reconnect with people, you dive into your goals. You stop needing closure because you've created it. You stop waiting for a message because you've already sent the one that matters. I'm done chasing, I'm choosing me now. And here's the wild part. When you stop giving someone the energy they didn't know what to do with, they feel it. It's like pulling the plug on a connection they didn't realize they relied on. Suddenly, you're not there to absorb their mixed signals. You're not there to keep the attention flowing. You're not there to keep the attention flowing. You're not there to reassure them that you'll always be around. And that silence, that absence, that emotional distance, it hits different because they're no longer in control of the dynamic. You are. But the beauty of this isn't just that they may come running back. It's that by the time they do, you might not even want them anymore. That's what happens when you detach for real. Not as a tactic, not as a test, but because you've genuinely outgrown the pattern. You've stopped chasing potential and started honoring reality. You've stopped trying to rewrite a story that's already shown you how it ends. You become untouchable in the best way, not because you've built walls, but because you've built standards. And that's when someone looks at you differently. That's when they feel the shift, not just in your actions, but in your energy, because you're no longer hoping they'll choose you. You've already chosen yourself. And the irony is, detachment doesn't push away what's meant for you. It makes space for it. It tells the universe, I'm no longer entertaining what's uncertain. I'm making room for what's real. It clears out the noise. It opens the door to love that doesn't have to be chased, decoded, or earned. Love that simply shows up and stays. But getting to that point means letting go of the fantasy. It means accepting that maybe they won't come back. Maybe they won't change. Maybe they're not your person, and that's okay. Because you're not just letting go of them. You're letting go of the version of yourself that kept waiting. You're releasing the attachment to someone else's timeline, someone else's potential, someone else's inconsistent presence. And in doing so, you're reclaiming everything you gave away trying to be enough. So you stop performing, you stop posting things for their attention, you stop making decisions based on how they might react. You live, you laugh again without the weight. You make plans without wondering if they'll interfere. You become someone who is deeply rooted in herself, still capable of love, but no longer ruled by it. Because the truth is, the most powerful thing you can ever do is detach with love. To care, but not cling. To hope, but not wait. To feel, but not chase. That's what makes someone unforgettable, not just to them, but to you. Because in that moment, you realize you don't need to delete them for them to feel your absence. You just need to come back home to yourself. And when you do that, you don't just stop chasing them, you stop needing them to come back.